It's a show about a guy whose consciousness travels in time, taking over people's bodies to fix their mistakes. It's a bit like when someone from IT remote desktops into your work computer to fix something, but without the incessant moaning about having to fix your computer.
You're part of a time travel experiment that went a little caca.
Quantum Leap.
Oh boy.
There are two ways to explain the premise of Donald P. Bellisario's show Quantum Leap. One is short but has no detail, and the other is a massive contextual info dump, like asking Auntie Beryl what she had for breakfast. Briefly, Sam Beckett is a time-travelling scientist temporarily inhabiting other people's bodies in order to put right some very minor thing that once went wrong. That's it boiled down to as few words as possible, but if you asked Auntie Beryl how to describe Quantum Leap, she'd say that she woke up about 30 minutes earlier than usual because the next door's dog was barking, and so she read a magazine for a bit and then wandered to the kitchen to fix some breakfast, but noticed she'd left the laundry light on overnight and then collected the newspaper from out front. The phone rang and she didn't manage to reach it in time, so she got out her address book and started calling every number in there to see if they were the ones who tried to call her.
Quantum Leap. That's neat.
Quantum Leap would have a few attempts at trying to whittle down the show's basic premise, but could never get it into less than 47 seconds.
Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. He awoke to find himself trapped in the past.
We gotta get going. Where are we going? What are we gonna do?
Having come up with the notion that you could time travel within your own lifetime, Dr. Samuel Beckett needed to test out his theory in order to keep the project funded, and things went a little Kaka. Sam vanished and woke up in someone else's body, a test pilot in the 1950s. With almost total amnesia, Sam's one link to his own time is a hologram of Al, an observer from Project Quantum Leap in the late 90s.
You really don't recognize me, do you?
No.
Or remember the experiment?
What experiment?
Sam slowly remembers details about himself, but funnily enough, never about his work, which is annoying since Sam Beckett is the only person who can get Sam Beckett home, which is like how the only person who can truly solve your addiction to collecting and huffing antique whiteboard markers is you.
Quantum Leap is your project, Sam. You're the genius behind it. At least you were before your brain got magnafoozled.
When Sam starts leaping from body to body, he and Al surmise the project is being controlled by some unseen force who wants Sam to put right what once went wrong.
According to Ziggy, there's an 82.6% chance you're here to keep Cheryl from marrying Bob.
We're not talking about preventing World War I by giving Archduke Ferdinand a bulletproof hat. Nor are we talking about going back to last Wednesday, so you didn't spend 3 hours browsing Netflix trying to find something to watch, and then just giving up and watching the only DVD left in your house, The Office Season 8 Disc 2. Instead, Sam often leaps in just as somebody's life is at a crossroads, and he usually has to fix one person's life by preventing them from ruining their future with a mistake, or reconciling two people who belong together, or breaking up two people who don't. Maybe solving a murder, or possibly preventing one. That sort of thing. It's just a pity he never leapt into Michael Scott to get him to stay in Scranton. Dr. Sam Beckett, played by Scott Bakula, is a genius on many levels with multiple degrees in different areas of science, and also a brilliant musician, a singer,
Everybody cut loose, fool loose.
a crack shot, and an expert kickboxer, and a lover.
Oh boy.
Charlie-san,
Machiko.
Naomi, Reverend Belcher.
Sam originally came up with the theory behind Quantum Leap, but his leaping has left massive holes in his memory, only some of which returns to him. Sam is sensitive, adaptable, often able to fake the abilities his new host needs, and usually finds little things in each leap that help him remember part of his own life.
Elk Ridge, Indiana.
Number, please. Number, please.
From his roots on a farm to his relationship with his father and his brother. Previous to the series, Bakula had done a lot of stage work, but in this show, he's a trooper, taking whatever the writers threw at him and brilliantly conveyed Sam's embarrassment, discomfort, or blind terror, often accompanied by a phrase that eventually became the show's catchphrase.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I think he's restrained. I know if, say, I leapt into the body of a man about to be beaten to a tar, I'd be using slightly spicier language, like oh shit, oh fuck, and of course, pooping s*** on a b***ing truck. It's one of the great performances of genre TV, and a tough gig since Sam was in almost every scene. Sam Beckett is a sensitive guy, not interested in Al's stream of locker room stories, and someone who becomes perhaps a little too involved in many of his assignments. Perhaps because not being a horn dog all the time gets him far more action than all of Al's crude pickup lines combined.
Yeah. Hey, you could fix me a sandwich anytime. Respect.
His guide, best friend, and sometimes tech support is Al Calavicci, a brightly dressed cigar-chomping womanizer who appears only to Sam as an incorporeal hologram, though in some circumstances he's occasionally visible to others, small children, and people with certain mental health issues.
Can any of you guys see me?
Someone Al is clearly not visible to was the show's costume designer, who put Dean Stockwell in all manner of loud, garish suits. Al was a runaway as a child and a former Navy pilot who'd been a POW during the Vietnam War, but by now had reached the rank of Rear Admiral. Oh, come on now, what are we, 12? Married more times than he could remember, he has a hard time working out which wife was which, apart from his first, Beth, who eventually moved on with her life after he was declared dead during his incarceration.
What the hell? I get repatriated in 5 years.
You could have been free.
I was free. Up here.
Dean Stockwell, an actor who'd been around for a while, but had moved in and out of acting like somebody buying and selling stock of a phone company.
Ay, pero Dios mío, ¿qué tú haces? Oh, I break for holograms, huh?
He was on a hot streak in the late 80s after appearing in the movie Married to the Mob, so Bellisario was very happy when Stockwell took the role. Dean Stockwell ignored the advice of actor friends like Dennis Hopper, who thought the series would end his career. Hopper, of course, made Super Mario Bros., so yeah.
You already know how it's going to end.
I knew how it was going to end when I took Brenda into the filing room. I still took her.
Bakula and Stockwell are so perfect in their roles that it's hard to imagine anyone else playing these characters. They are as complementary to each other as pancakes and maple syrup. I'll be right back. Al Calavicci is a bit of a hound with all of his affairs and ex-wives, and he has a hand link that barely works, thanks to Project Quantum Leap having lousy Wi-Fi that they can't upgrade because Sam is the only one with the password. Sam would travel through the decades between the 50s and the 80s, mostly landing in the US but occasionally overseas. Sam in particular hated leaping into the 70s.
I'm back in the 70s.
An era that was considered absolutely uncool when the show was in production. I mean, I dig. Polyester clothing was from one of man's darkest ages. Sam was also not keen on leaping into the body of a woman, mainly because of the shoes. They clashed with Al's coat. Actually, everything clashed with Al's coats. When we saw the occasional glimpse of the late 90s at Project Quantum Leap, everyone seemed to wear flashy clothing, except Sam. He wore a unitard. I'm not judging, I'm wearing a unitard right now. It's comfortable, and it freaks people out when I answer the front door and ask them what year it is.
Look at me, I'm standing here. I'm dressed like a giant TV dinner talking to a hologram. Now, what does that make me?
Eccentric.
Sam leaps into a man who's about to be executed, or into the middle of receiving shock treatment, or someone in a coffin. You know, these aren't always going to be laugh-a-minute episodes, but even the episodes with a lighter background usually have a very serious dramatic theme.
All right. Good moves, you're better than Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee?
Never mind.
Often episodes feel like they're using a particular movie or TV show to springboard off to tell one of their own stories. Oh, that one's Driving Miss Daisy. That one's Swept Away. That one's The Right Stuff. That's clearly based on Geraldo. Sometimes these starting points were based on what sets were available on the Universal lot. In one episode, they even use footage of the same plane from one of Bellisario's earlier shows, Tales of the Gold Monkey. One episode has Sam as a stuntman on the movie Earthquake, which was a great excuse to grab footage from that film. Quantum Leap never wants to commit to who or what is in control of Sam's leaps. Is it a deity, a demigod, or a donut? In season 2, they just give up and say, it's God.
No, Senator. I'm referring to him.
Or her?
I hope you're right, Senator.
But later years walked this back and kept things vague, like a dating profile that neglects to mention vestigial gills. There are rules, but rules are often made to be broken. Ziggy, a computer originally created by Sam, provides through Al and his wonky hand link any information that Sam needs, as well as odds of what is required of Sam in any particular leap, like a kind of do-gooder bookmaker app. Of course, all this technology is only helpful to a point. It's up to Sam to execute.
Well, Ziggy's still working on the specifics.
Sam sees his host in the mirror and is usually the only one who can see or hear Al, as their brainwaves are linked. The last season sees Sam taking on personality traits and memories of his host on a few leaps, his mind becoming entwined with the host. Another time the rules were slightly bent, Sam leaping into the body of one of his ancestors during the Civil War.
Well, you know, just sometimes you kind of feel alone, that's all.
What do you mean you're alone? I mean, it's not much, but you got me.
Donald P. Bellisario had started writing TV episodes in the 70s and wrote or co-wrote many episodes of the 1978 series Battlestar Galactica. After Galactica, Bellisario had become a successful producer in his own right, creating or co-creating series like Tales of the Gold Monkey, Airwolf, and of course Magnum P.I.
Mom, I'm gonna miss Magnum.
It's gonna run for the next 8 years, okay? I think you got a little time.
After Quantum Leap's run, he created JAG, which spun off into the super successful NCIS franchise, but Bellisario has maintained Quantum Leap was always his favourite.
Sam, you know the rules.
I called you by your name last night.
You can still get out of this.
How?
Lie.
I just knew.
Works for me.
In the early 80s, Bellisario had wanted to make an anthology series, a concept that at the time wasn't particularly attractive to networks, and he had the idea to make a time travel show with 1 or 2 continuing characters, but in a different environment each week to keep viewers coming back. With Quantum Leap, Sam could only leap within his own lifetime, which meant they wouldn't need to recreate expensive period settings earlier than the 50s. The series was sold to NBC, who greenlit the series as a mid-season replacement, premiering in March 1989.
Why don't you try Peggy Sue? It might sound a little better.
All right. You expect us to believe that God let Dr. Beckett back into 56 just to help Buddy Holly with the lyrics to Peggy Sue?
If you take away the sci-fi backstory, Quantum Leap is basically a story about a guardian angel, a subgenre that's been well explored in movies and television, well explored like the back of a couch, where one might find keys to a vehicle you no longer own, old lottery tickets, and Aunt Beryl's heart medication. The pills say do not mix with alcohol, but that's never stopped her.
Yes, this is Angel Sam, and I'm Angel Al.
The truth, huh?
There's a subgenre of television drama that often has a fantasy element, where a protagonist wanders around solving other people's personal problems. Sometimes these are part of the action-adventure format, like The Fugitive or The Incredible Hulk, but occasionally you got shows about supernatural operatives like Highway to Heaven, about an angel and his sidekick, or the later Touched by an Angel, also an angel, but crucially not Charlie's Angels.
Has anything changed?
Nada.
Anthology shows had been popular with Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, but the lack of continuing characters hampered audience identification. A way around that was to have continuing characters. US-made time travel shows appeared every now and then, and either they were about observing and not necessarily changing history, like The Time Tunnel, or fixing it in a small way, like Voyager's attempted in the early 80s. Either way, time travel to epic periods tended to be an expensive proposition, like getting your Ferrari serviced by Old Jed, the local handyman. Quantum Leap kept things street level. Instead of trying to stop Pearl Harbor, Quantum Leap would try and stop someone from seeing Pearl Harbor. But back up a bit to 1978. One episode of Battlestar Galactica credited to Galactica creator Glenn A. Larson featured one of the regular characters, Apollo, reluctantly sent on a mission by mysterious beings. His consciousness is placed in the body of someone in an alien civilization with a mission to prevent a war.
Charlie.
It's like seeing a ghost. Oh.
That's entirely possible.
Apollo is aided by the image of one of his mysterious employers in the form of Edward Mulhare, and of course only Apollo can see or hear him, while to everyone else, Apollo looks and sounds like the person whose body he's renting.
But I'm not Charlie. I'm from another galaxy.
Or it could just be a massive coincidence.
Well, maybe you changed history. Ha, you did.
Quantum Leap straddled genres in a way that few other series could manage. One week was a romp about Sam being a nerdy teen racing cars, a sidekick on a 50s sci-fi show, and then he'd be whisked into a racially charged scenario. a man about to be executed, a gay serviceman dealing with vigilantes, or a woman experiencing extreme sexual harassment, which for some people is just Tuesday. Quantum Leap never really leaves you in any doubt as to where its sentiments lay. Whether most of the audience absorbed any of this was always another question, but creating an interesting show was first and foremost in the mind of Bellisario. Occasionally, Sam and Al will begin a leap at opposite ends of an issue that they would usually meet toward the end. Popular story types were ones where Sam arranges for two estranged family members to reconcile, while another was for Sam to engineer the breakup of a toxic relationship. Had the series progressed, maybe we would have seen one where Sam had to get two people to reconcile that he'd originally split up. Antagonists were usually things like a mean fiance, controlling parents, backwards townfolk, all the way up to murderers.
You mean to get him and this Suzanne together, maybe?
Yeah, or to keep them apart.
The goal wasn't to make people rich or famous, just to give them a good life that they wouldn't have enjoyed before Sam's visit, to make sure opportunities are not squandered. Also, there's no indication after, say, a successful matchmaking leap and Sam has leapt out, whether either partner says, "Hey, you aren't the person I fell in love with." In Quantum Leap's early seasons, they rarely dealt with Sam or Al's real life too closely. Sam would pine for his late father, while Al would reminisce about his interesting upbringing or be sanguine about the fate of his institutionalized sister.
You know how this story's going to end, don't you?
The show garnered decent ratings, but there would often be a question about renewal. The first season episode Color of Truth showed Sam leaping into an African American man in the Deep South during segregation. It was this episode that clicked for many viewers, whether they could finally see what the series was about and its potential. And it was an episode that some credit for the show's renewal for a second season. But that ongoing, slightly tenuous question of renewal would encourage Bellisario and company to explore Sam and Al's lives a little more closely, particularly in season openers and the last episode of a season. Sam leaps home as a boy, and then later saves his brother from dying in Vietnam. Al, we learn, was a pilot during Vietnam and spent several years as a prisoner of war, during which time he was declared dead and his wife remarried. Another episode saw Sam leap into a younger version of Al and managed to change history so that Al was not part of Quantum Leap.
Hey, a sailor. You want to buy a thirsty nurse a drink?
These are, for me, the best episodes of the series, with the in-between episodes always scratching for ways to link the storylines to Sam and Al's personal histories.
Oh boy.
A leap where Al and Sam accidentally switched places gave us a chance to see Project Quantum Leap in more detail than we'd previously seen. Every now and then we would see scientist Gushy and occasionally psychiatrist Dr. Beeks, and Al's oft-mentioned on-again, off-again girlfriend, Tina.
Are you okay?
Am I okay? I'll tell you about it later, when we're in bed.
Sam is in fact married, and his previously forgotten wife Donna, who's part of the project, seems not to have a problem with this, or this, or this, or this, or this, or this. I mean, I've heard of open marriages, but that's very tolerant. And then she's never mentioned again. I've heard of ghosting, but that's just stone cold, Beckett. But way back in the first season she was mentioned, but counted as one of Sam's lost loves.
I didn't show up for the wedding.
No, you showed up. She didn't.
Quantum Leap, not generally a show about world-shattering events, but about personal tragedies, growth and redemption, has a rather sedate theme tune from composer Mike Post. It almost feels like it was a throwaway tune for a mid-season replacement series, but it does fit the quirky nature of the series so perfectly. There was a final season makeover with big beats and giant brass, but it doesn't quite have the same intimate thrust. Oh, come on now, get out of the gutter. As a show that seemed to lead a charmed life in terms of being renewed, the show's 5th season featured several attempts to increase the scope and appeal of the series, adding more seemingly crowd-pleasing moments, or at least trying a lot harder to engage casual viewers. Things like Sam leaping into the driver of Marilyn Monroe, leaping into the body of Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Oh boy.
Or Elvis. It might have smacked somewhat of desperation for a show that had previously kept away from real-life people, apart from occasional name-dropping jokes like this.
Hello, Mr. Trump.
Or implying Buddy Holly took notes from Sam.
Piggy Suey, Piggy Suey.
Or that Sam crossed paths with a young Michael Jackson. The fifth season opened with Sam leaping into Lee Harvey Oswald at several times in the years leading up to the Kennedy assassination. Bellisario has spoken about having encountered Oswald when they were both in the Marines, though it still proved to be a slightly controversial episode.
Your Swiss cheese mind probably doesn't remember, but the first time Oswald killed Jackie, too.
There was the three-part story trilogy, not a favourite of mine, where Sam leaps into three situations involving a murder accusation that will just not go away.
Who are you?
Who are you?
And then there's the Evil Leaper trilogy, where Sam is returned to a previous host, revisiting Jimmy, a mentally disabled man, a few years after his first leap, but finds that his good work has come undone thanks to an evil leaper, Aaliyah, who comes complete with an evil hologram. The Evil Leaper trilogy was built on the premise that another organisation was using technology to ruin people's lives, which is a bit like social media, but less self-inflicted. The last episode of the fifth season, broadcast in May 1993, Mirror Image, was a show that was either going to be the season final or the series finale. Sam leaps into a bar in a Pennsylvania coal town on the day he was born and sees familiar faces from previous leaps. There's a mysterious bartender, and Sam sees his own face in the mirror for the first time in years.
Oh boy.
He also witnesses another person leaping and twigs the bartender has something to do with Sam's journey.
You are the one who's been leaping me, aren't you?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, what would you say?
That he's been leaping you through time.
Having been told he's actually in control of his leaping, Sam decides he has one thing he has to put right. Tell Al's first wife that Al is still alive.
Al's alive. And he's coming home.
After being a bubble show for several years, Quantum Leap was finally cancelled at the end of its fifth season, due to either, depending on who you asked, declining ratings or a change of network management. The final episode was edited to add a title card, giving some sense of closure, but it wasn't necessarily well received by fans at the time. With years of perspective behind us, having some small ending where Al stayed with his first wife does give the show some emotional heft. Though you gotta feel for poor Tina. Years later, the apparent original ending was unearthed, showing Al talking with his first and now only wife about not giving up on getting Sam home, which would have set up a sixth season. But that didn't happen, so the title card gives the series a bittersweet ending. I dare anyone, not a complete sociopath, to not tear up at the end of Mirror Image, even if it is just because Sam's name is misspelled. Bellisario put a lot of himself in the show, and I don't just mean his kids. From his time in the military to the bar in the final show, which was a replica of a bar owned by Bellisario's father. His then wife Deborah Pratt wrote and produced episodes, as well as provided the voice of Ziggy and also the narration at the start of the episodes.
Ziggy!
Yes, Doctor.
Give me what I want, baby.
Ooh, if you weren't my father.
Quantum Leap has amazing production values for a show of this type. It never looks cheap. Part of this is down to producers often reusing sets from other productions on the Universal lot, or even just writing episodes based on what would be available. The show does an excellent job of transporting you to the period the episode is set in, with an attention to detail that makes the show seem timeless.
4 years ago, my first leap was targetless, subject to a whim of fate. Since then, I think my subconscious has been working on the problem because I now know how to hit the bullseye.
Quantum Leap featured a huge number of actors in guest roles, most of whom were familiar fixtures on television in the late 80s and early 90s, but a few that stood out were Terry Farrell from Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5's Andrea Thompson and Claudia Christian, Jennifer Aniston, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Brooke Shields, Michael Madsen, Tia Carrera, Roddy McDowall, Carolyn Seymour, Melora Hardin, Meg Foster, Terry Hatcher, Bob Saget, Diedrich Bader, Neil Patrick Harris, Jerry Hardin, Robert Duncan McNeil, Richard Hurd, Carla Gugino, and of course Bruce McGill, who appeared in both the pilot and the finale.
Are you saying I can leap home anytime I want?
Technically, yes.
What's the catch?
The catch is that you have to accept that you control your own destiny.
I mean, those are just the ones that leap out at you. And you might be thinking, what, no Lance Legault? Well, no, there he is. Also, does Scott Bakula pulling double duty as John Beckett count?
What the hell do you think I do all day?
As I said, the standout episodes for me and my personal favourites were generally the ones that directly dealt with Sam and Al's lives. MIA, The Leap Home Parts 1 and 2, A Leap for Lisa, the Lee Harvey Oswald episodes, where they missed a trick and didn't call him Leap Harvey Oswald, and of course Mirror Image, which, while somewhat melancholic, is a fitting and touching way to end the series.
I am
Don Quixote, the Lord of La Mancha.
Quantum Leap is a unique show. It's clearly remained as one of the more fondly remembered shows from the late 80s and early 90s. Not enough to be referenced all that often. But when it does show up, like here...
What the hell's a quantum leap?
Oh, a great show from the Coke-fueled era of 80s television. Are you leaping?
That was just a TV character. I'm an actor.
You didn't get a piece of the show? Your residuals ran out. I'm sorry.
I've been working constantly for 30 years.
It's all the more appreciated.
Oh, boy.
Also, it was a lot of fun when Dean Stockwell guest starred on Bakula's later series, Enterprise.
Good flipping kick, Sam.
I had caught glimpses of Quantum Leap when it first aired, but didn't really watch an episode until some repeats of the first season. And then for whatever reason, the last few seasons were burned off in a late night slot where I live. It's only been more recently that I've been able to sit down and watch the entire series in order from start to finish. I have to say it's a show that I've appreciated that much more as an older viewer.
Imagine all the people.
Quantum Leap was a high-quality series with mostly great writing and always brilliant acting and production value, and a series I feel people will appreciate more with time. It's a different type of show that really wanted to try and do different things, be a little out there in places, and put its star through his paces. It does perhaps lose a little steam in its final season, but it has one of the more memorable final episodes. For a show about time travelling, Quantum Leap really is timeless. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.